I'd like to call the Sherwood School Board to order for Wednesday, December 9th, 2020, for our regular board meeting, and start with the consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the items on the consent agenda? And if so, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's go ahead and move on to reports. Superintendent Dr. Cordy.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Allen and board members. For this evening's report, the primary area of focus is really around all that we're doing in the district across buildings levels at the district level to advance the work around limited in-person instruction. There are so many different elements of that to consider and to work with our associations on, and really working at the building level to determine those students and families that will be reached out to when we take that next step. And so I just want to really affirm the work that's taking place across our team, across the district. It's a lot of hard work, and just like really so much that we've encountered the last 9 months, there's no playbook for this. And so everybody's just working really hard to do the right thing, and ultimately in service to our students and some of the most vulnerable students that are in our district. We work closely in consultation with Washington County Public Health. They are in weekly meetings, Washington County Superintendent meetings with me, along with Ms. Andrag, who is our liaison in that meeting, and then back to our nursing staff and others. And so we have that direct connection, can ask questions there and really learn firsthand some of the challenges they're facing and ways that they can provide support to us. So we're really hoping that early in the new year, we'll be able to take those next small, safe steps in limited in-person instruction. Related to that, I, along with so many others, attend many meetings and engage in so many conversations with others in the county and also in the region, while we learn what our neighbors are up to as it relates to limited in-person instruction and development of budget, enrollment challenges, and the list goes on. So I just really want to reiterate that we're engaged in conversations both locally, regionally, and statewide to really keep our collective finger on the pulse of what's going on. Later on tonight, Mr. Bennett and I will be sharing with you some work that we're really excited about, and that is our equity plan. So stay tuned for that, please. And last but not least, I want to share with you that our dear friend and colleague, Karen Dalby, who you know as our special programs director for the last 10 years, but she has served in the Sherwood School District for 22 years. Her first assignment was as school psych, and then she was a TOSA, and then again for the last 10 years as director. She made the decision recently to follow her passion and her heart, and is going to be working at the Northwest Regional ESD in the early intervention and early childhood special education department. And so while we are going to just miss her professionally and personally so much, we're glad for her, because this is something that she is really passionate about. And as she puts it, really just fills her bucket and her heart. So just know that that is happening. She will be with us until February 8th will be her first day at the ESD. And so in true Karen Dalby fashion, she'll be working hard and pushing right to the end. And then in the meantime, that's one of the two administrative positions that we have posted. The other, as you know, is the very exciting equity and inclusion coordinator position that we have dreamed about for a long time. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that position in our presentation a little bit later as well. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Well, certainly, if you can't come up with an excuse for her to have to give a long, detailed presentation, maybe to the January board meeting, absolutely convey to her our congratulations and tinged with our sadness that we're going to be losing her.
Absolutely, will do.
All right, next up is ASB report. Ainsley Holloway.
Good evening, everyone. We have been doing pretty good as a school. This week is Cancer Awareness Week. Today was breast cancer, so I've got my pink shirt on. We have a scavenger hunt around town to collect different colors of ribbons. We have skin cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer, thyroid cancer, and I think stomach cancer around town at different places to not only bring them in business, but also to let people get outside and still be safe. There are some pretty big open spaces like Snyder Park is where one of them is. So it's we kept safety in mind when we were planning that. Sparrow Club is right around the corner in January when we're releasing our Sparrow Vivi. She's super duper cute. I can't off the top of my head think of what she has, but she is the cutest little girl ever. You guys are gonna love her. Yeah, so our leadership class is working on that, and also Bowman pageant. We want to keep it as normal but as safe as possible, because we think that it all being online would be a deterrent, but at the same time we can't do it in person. So we're trying to find a balance there. We have a video. Cameron Christensen was really excited about it today in the student council meeting. He said that a teacher from the high school is going to tell an embarrassing story, and then students at the high school are going to recreate it as the teacher is telling it. So we're very excited to see what they come up with. I'm thrilled. I don't know about you guys. Hopefully I'll pass it around to you guys, but I'm pumped. So yeah, everything's going pretty good. The winter sports have started their little mini season. I know that girls basketball is practicing outside in the new SMS outside the court. So it's nice for them to have. Also nice for that to have been built because came in handy right on time. Yeah, other than that, I don't think I have anything.
Great, thank you, Ainsley. I don't believe we have an SEA or OSEA report tonight, so that will move us to City Council. Councilor Rosner.
Thank you, everybody, for having me to your meeting again. I just want to start and just a big thank you to the board, the staff, Superintendent Cordy, and all the hard work you guys are doing with our kids and making remote learning happening. I know it's not easy, and it's been a challenge for us in our house, but it's working, and kids are actually getting good grades, so I'm happy. So thank you very much for all the hard work. I have a couple things. For some of you may already know this, but I'll just mention it again. We are taking a look at 3 different regions around the town right now in terms of growth and how we're managing that growth. We're doing a relook of the Brookman area. It's been a long time since we did that concept plan. We're looking at the alignment of that road down there and how that's going to work as that builds out. I know that's something you all are very interested in, because that means more kids for the schools as that develops down there. We're also looking at our planning commission last night did a resolution to approve the idea of doing a major amendment ask with Metro, which in layman's term is doing a little expansion of the urban growth boundary around the northern side of town for a potential commercial center there, large box retailer type environment, maybe even a hotel. So we're excited about that because that means jobs and means more balance to our tax base. And of course, as most of you know, we're also looking at doing a relook of Sherwood West and updating that concept plan, which is all that land that's out there around the high school today. I also wanted to mention, I was just thinking about all the stuff the city's been doing around the COVID relief for our community and our businesses. And I just want to kind of do a quick recap. Some of you may know we just launched a new grant program with some additional CARES funds that we got from the county. It's about another, I think, close to $200,000 that we're offering to businesses that are impacted by this current. The current parameters we're under the extreme level of risk. Pat, you know all about this stuff, as I can guess. But so we're focused on restaurants and the entertainment centers and businesses that are currently can no longer do indoor dining or shut down right now. But you know, we're up to about $600,000 total that the city's put out in grants. We're continue to look for other ways to support our local businesses and help them through this time. I think it's especially hard for a lot of these restaurants because any reserves that they had at the beginning of this that helped them get through it are gone now. And they're really straining to stay afloat. So we're trying to find ways to help them, and I encourage everyone who's listening in a safe way to support your local businesses. Use DoorDash if you can. Get down to the ones that have outdoor dining. They would all appreciate your business. We also, on another note, our senior center continues to deliver hundreds and hundreds of lunches every day to seniors in our community that would normally have gone to the senior center to get those lunches. And it just seems like every week we're delivering more and more meals, and that's been a really successful program over there. And on a kind of a brighter note, excuse the pun, we have put extra lights, Christmas lights in downtown Sherwood. And if you don't know, there's actually a light show that happens at Cannery Square in the evenings. I believe it starts at 5 and runs till about 10 on a timer. So if you want to get in the car and drive by and see the light show down there, I highly encourage that. It's a lot of fun. Anyways, I think that is all I have for this evening. And as always, I'll ask at the end. Oh, one more thing. And Pat, I mentioned this to you. We're also starting a process with TriMet to look at our bus routes in town. When we closed down Railroad Street, you may have noticed that we rerouted all the buses through downtown, and they just come in and go to the traffic circle and go out. And that caused us to do a lot of thinking about what do we really want our bus system to look like in Sherwood, and how can we partner with TriMet to maybe improve that. I asked Joe to reach out to you, Heather, and Jim, to see if you guys want to participate in those conversations as we look at bus routes, if you guys have any concerns or ideas around how TriMet services our community. But we think there's some ways that we can improve it and maybe give more options to people that live in our community in terms of how they get around town and how they get to the work centers in the region. So we're going to be starting that process. But that's all I have. So as I always do, I'll ask, are there any questions?
Looks like no questions, but I will just comment, talking about updating the Brookman plan. I have to smile. The preliminary Brookman concept plan was the very first thing I was ever involved in terms of community involvement in Sherwood back in 2000. And then the plan that you're talking about updating was about the last thing I was ever involved in when I was on the planning commission, coming up now on 8 years ago. So that there's been a lot of plans for Brookman over time.
Well, we're going to continue to build on your good work.
Right. Plan something.
That's right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Concludes reports for tonight. That takes us to public comment. Ms. Andrick, is there any public comment that's been submitted?
No, we have not had any public comment submitted.
All right. Thank you. In that case, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cordy and Mr. Bennett for the equity plan update.
Thank you. Good evening. And as I referenced earlier, we are excited to share with you the equity plan that takes us really into the next iteration of the work that we've been doing in our district. I think if Ms. Andrade, if you could please project our document. Thank you. For the last 5+ years, we have been engaging in equity work, professional development, adjustments to our hiring practices, book studies, and the list goes on. And we are really eager now to take the next steps in our equity journey and towards becoming an anti-racist organization. Part of that focus includes Mr. Bennett and me as assistant superintendent and superintendent having this work as each of our sole professional goals for this year. So we think that is noteworthy. That is, it really is indicative of how important this work is, and we are going to lead it and focus on it together. And we're both, I think, super excited about that. The work that we will be sharing with you this evening is a 2-year plan of action, and it has been developed in concert with feedback and guidance from various leaders and staff of color. And Mr. Bennett will talk more about that when he's presenting in a moment. So in general, our focus is on 2 key areas. So learning teams and a visioning team. And ultimately, the convergence of those 2 areas will lead to empathy interviews and an equity audit and the development, ultimately, of a strategic initiative that will be key as a component of our strategic plan. So you can see here the 5 primary objectives of our work. I won't read those to you. So we're excited to share this plan and eager to answer questions for you as they arise. And for the next portion of the presentation, I will hand it over to Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Dr. Cordy. Good evening, Board of Directors. Good to see you this evening. As Dr. Cordy said, we're really excited about this work. The first action that we've largely taken or are taking is to form a school level and a district office learning team. We have formed teams at every school, and we're working on forming the district office team. That was a later addition to the plan. We've taken some feedback from district administrators on what that might look like, and we're starting to get that team formed. Focus for now is these are learning teams, as Dr. Cordy said. Each team is currently picking a book to do a book study at our school levels. I believe they've chosen books and many are beginning their book studies. And their focus is learning on learning right now about equity and anti-racist issues. As I said, we did have them all choose their own books. Lots of teams had already done other book studies on equity, and so different schools are doing different books. And we do know that one of the keys to adult learning is there needs to be some autonomy and choice over what it is that's learned. Another big piece of this group will be to participate in and or assist us in implementing the equity audit, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. So we're really excited about these teams. We really wanted to get something right out of the gate and get started quickly. There's lots of staff who are ready to take action, and so we're excited to get that going. The next piece around forming the Sherwood Equity Vision Committee, this is actually a new step and an important step for us. We are in the process of forming this committee. It will consist of, as you can see, community members, a board member, teachers, classified staff, administrators, students, parents, and we're working to collect a diverse group of stakeholders to be on this. Already been some interesting learning that has come out of this. Dr. Cordy and I sat down in a check-in and developed an initial list and then went out and sought feedback. And when we talked to Yashika Island, and she'll be one of the facilitators of this group, and Yashika has been an equity consultant we worked with last year. She did a lot of training for our administrators, and she's really become a close and trusted colleague and friend, and is doing a lot of work with us around this year, not only working on the training with our administrators, but she will help us, just helping us plan and facilitate this equity audit as well as plan this committee. And so when we ran this list by her and some of our other staff, it was interesting when we started talking to people of color about some changes to the list we needed to make. It was very insightful. We talked about having an organization like Latino Network on Dr. Cordy and I had that serves different groups of color, but those organizations are not, there's not a lot of them in Sherwood. And so but when we talked to Yashika, she said, absolutely, you need to have one of those organizations in your committee ready to go, even if they're not in Sherwood, because they'll have access to resources and ideas that you won't have without them there. We got lots of affirmation that it's important not only to have people of color on this committee, but white allies and in the parent realm, the student realm, community members. It needs to be all of that in place. Yashika, who is a Black woman, very clear with us, and it was really nice for her to be direct and honest with me. That's one of the things I love about her. It was just critical that we have a Black student, a Black parent, and a Black staff member on this committee, in addition to Latinos and other people of color. But just this critical notion that not all people experience issues of racism similarly, and it's important to have those multiple perspectives on there. Just really important that we have a business owner that is a person of color in the community, maybe not associated with our school, but just might see the community things from a different lens. And then she also, and other folks also talked to us just about power dynamics, and this may or may not be connected with issues around race, but just this notion of our people going to speak their very honest truth when they're supervisors in the room or the superintendents in the room. And so thinking about how we set that stuff up. So a lot of this is really obvious now, but it was less obvious before kind of vetting this with a broad group of stakeholders. So that was good learning for me right out of the gate and will certainly influence the way we built this group. Our first meeting of this group is tentatively scheduled for late January. In that meeting, we expect to do some group agreements and team building, sort of build that culture around where people will share their truths and their honesty with us. We'll talk about the plan and the purpose of the meeting. We'll do some demographics and data review just to bring people up to where we are on the district about what our district looks like and what achievement and other things look like in our district. And we'll talk about the equity audit, which I'll go to in just a couple more minutes here. We'll go through what that looks like. And then we'll likely have more meetings in the spring, likely 2 more, where we'll take a few months, execute this equity audit, compile the data, come back to this team, and then we'll sift through it and have them work with us to make some recommendations about next steps to exec team and the board. And then going forward, we see this team being an ongoing group that meets in our district. And there'll be ongoing guidance as well as accountability for taking the actions we said we were going to take. And that's how we see this group playing out. A related action is action 2A, not just a district level equity committee. And that's really a subset of this broader equity visioning committee, but it's more the staff focused on implementation is really the focus of this. Once we get this work from the committee and we're going through and executing this stuff, this will be the group that will help guide us in that implementation piece. So action 3, if you have questions, I should have said this before, but as always, just jump in and ask, and we'll have a chance, obviously, at the end. The next one is really conducting an equity audit. And an equity audit, I think, has been a real missing piece from our equity work in the past years. And really, what we need to do is do a deeper dive into what our issues are in the district, what our barriers to success for certain students are in our district. And then once we know what those barriers are more clearly, then we can start finding ways to dismantle these barriers and disrupt the system and become the anti-racist organization we hope to be. So to do that, we'll do an equity audit. We'll do this over a couple of years. It's too in-depth and complex to address in 1 year. There's just too many issues to unravel. In the equity audit we're looking at doing, there's really a technical section, which is really fairly straightforward, and it looks at things like policy and mission statements. What data are you collecting? What does your placement look like in advanced courses and special programs and TAG and things of those nature? And those are relatively easy to answer and maybe more complex to solve in some cases, or complex to solve. I think the part of the equity audit that is really interesting is the part that deals with empathy interviews and really tries to get out, what does it feel like to be in Sherwood? What does attending Sherwood schools look like for the variety of student groups that attend and students that attend in our school? So one thing we want to get at, so one of the questions we want to be able to answer is, is discipline applied equally in our schools? And so to get at that question, we'll talk to some students we'll talk to lots of different students and students groups. We'll talk to staff, we'll talk to parents, and we'll compare what their answers say. And it'll be very interesting to see what different groups of people, what different stakeholders tell us about this. And when we want to get at what discipline applied equally, we won't ask them the question, is discipline applied equally? Because we don't want a yes or no answer. When we're talking with students, it might sound something like, so what does it look like when students get in trouble in class? Talk to us about that. Is everyone treated fairly? Who isn't? Who's not? And just ask follow-up questions and try to get the story of people. And that's really the important part we're trying to get to, and then compile all that together. A variety of staff will execute these empathy interviews. We're currently working on what coding and collecting that data is going to look like exactly. We've got some things we've been putting in place. We know we'll need to train staff to conduct these so that they're done in a thoughtful way, in a consistent way, and so that we're getting really the data we need, and that we're building alliances and learning as we go through this. And once we compile all this data, we'll share it back with the visioning committee later this spring, and try to identify what those barriers are and what we might do to start knocking them down. And then we'll use a similar process for the second part of the audit sometime next school year. And so in the first phase of the audit, which will be this year, it really looks at things like policy, mission statement, school organization, and then things like school environment, climate, and staff. And that has more to do with how staff interact with students and are prepared to do some of this equity work. Phase 2 gets a little bit more into the academic side of things, and it's around assessment and placement, professional development we offer to staff, and standards and curriculum development. And so those are the two phases of the audit that we're looking at right now. And we really think that by, after doing some reading over the summer about how school districts have successfully moved forward in equity work and talking to others, we really believe that this equity audit will make more apparent to us the problems in our district that we need to be working to address. If there are no questions about that, I believe I will turn it back over to Dr. Cordy.
Let's take a pause and see if anyone's got questions. I see Jessica moving for her mute button.
Yep, thanks, Pat. That's good catch. So when I see the word equity and hear the word equity, and we're putting equity and anti-racism together, and that's very appropriate and been a focus for our district. But when I think about some of the achievement gap data that we gather, it's not just racial equity that we're looking at. We're also looking at disability, kids with disability or other socioeconomic status equity. And so I wonder whether, and would be interested in whether you all had talked to our consultant about, does it make sense to call this kind of a racial equity audit? Or are we going to be looking at some of those other issues as well? Because I think we need to be as clear as we can with the community about what we're intending to measure and address from an equity standpoint, so that we don't get halfway through this and all of a sudden have maybe the disability community say, well, why isn't this addressing concerns that I might have? Or why isn't this addressing socioeconomic inequity in our community? Those kinds of things. I just think the clearer we can be so that we are, we've got lots of work to do in all of those areas. But being clear about which one or ones we are addressing here, I think will help right-size expectations about what a plan is going to look like.
Good feedback. Thank you. We'll clarify that, and we have put some thought into that. But I think being really clear on how we talk about this and what our words say, and really precise with that language is a good thing. Thank you for that feedback.
Other questions or comments? Eric.
So when I look at the terms of equity and anti-racism, I think that there's probably a very broad spectrum of kind of understanding and experience with this. I think there's a bunch of different, just with terminology, basic concepts, and it seems like we're kind of jumping right in to start doing these audits, but are we going to be doing some work ahead of time to kind of align the views of everybody kind of involved in this, especially those who are giving out the questions and doing some of the work? So so everybody's kind of on the same kind of baseline of understanding of terminology and concepts when we bring up these different terms.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Are you referring to the people who will be on the committee, or people who will be conducting the empathy interviews, or just like the staff in general who will be?
I think it's going to be all three as you slowly roll it out. I think it's going to be the committee initially, and then I think when you move on to start doing the interviews, I think it goes out to them, and then eventually out to the staff. It just seems like when we some of these terms, it seems like having the conversation at the beginning to kind of set everybody's so everybody kind of has just kind of a common understanding that when we use term A or term B or talk about different parts of equity, that this is what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Eric, I think that's great feedback. When we're thinking about the launching of that visioning committee and the skill set of Yashika, who we have just had the pleasure and honor of working with last year and then now this year, that is definitely built into that first meeting. Creating a conversation and hosting the conversations around those pieces. And I think your comment here is just a really good reminder and just affirms how important that is. I do want to follow up on the jumping right in. I think that's how you started off your question and your comment. And I think it definitely, we are definitely doing that. So I think that feeling that you're having is accurate. And where we're coming from internally is that we have done, the work that we've done over the last several years has been very well intentioned and moving us in the right direction. But we realized, after this summer and moving into this year, that the next step needs to be bold and it needs to be like nothing we've ever done before. And so I think that observation that you have is absolutely right. And we believe the time is now to jump into these conversations and engage in this next level of work. Thank you for your feedback about that.
And just one other point. I mean, I think this is just piggybacking on a little bit of what Jessica says. I mean, as far as our defining of these terms, I think just at a broad level, I think we need to make sure that we maximize the inclusivity. She mentioned social, economic, and disabilities. I would also add to that equity component, gender and sexual orientation. I mean, I think it's things that we all know kind of fit in, but something that, it's explicitly stated that includes these things. And then as far as the racial component, so, I would say like racial and national origin discrimination or prejudice, because those two sort of tie together.
Well, if I could, I think Jessica's point was maybe a little bit different than that, because part of what needs to happen is, if you go down that path of you kind of widen the lens to a bunch of other things, we know from decades and decades of history that we focus on those other things, and that all those other things are, no matter what they are worse when you also then factor in race. And so I think what Jessica was saying is, if what we're going to really do is, if it's a racial equity audit, let's call it a racial equity audit, and the notion of leading with race really becomes, a part of what we're talking about doing, to actually target what are the biggest problems and start there, which doesn't mean you ignore all those other issues. We're always going to continue to care about those outcome disparities and those sorts of things, and continue to work on them. But this is objectively committing ourselves to working on this body that we've not historically worked on before. Jessica or Heather, have I got that about right?
That's better said than I said it, Pat. Thank you.
Yes, well said.
And if I could add, it seems like, what Mike was talking about is a little bit more about what we've always considered the achievement gap. And this is a little bit different. I think if we make it too broad, it doesn't have the same effect. And I think it's really intelligent to be proactive about this and not get into a position where, gosh, this exists, you haven't done anything about it. So I appreciate the proactive approach as well.
I also really like that this is bold, that it is detailed, that it will give it the time that it needs to really get good impact, good feedback, especially from those who are experiencing this firsthand: students, staff, parents. I really like all of those components, and I applaud the district for working with a DEI consultant. I think these are critically important conversations. They are going to be easier and harder for members of our community to have them. And so working with somebody who knows how to have these conversations in a way that enables people to speak their truth, and for folks to be able to grow, and for us to be able to build a plan that's evidence-based, I think is really important. And I really want to applaud the leadership of the district for embracing this absolutely necessary step, and for putting together a really thoughtful plan.
Well, and the urgency of jumping right in, as Eric and Heather have both said, I think is really important. It was hard to hear at a demonstration early this summer from kids of color in our district talking about how distance learning made their lives better because it meant that they weren't subject to the daily racism that they ordinarily experienced in our schools in Sherwood. Now, I think there's a lot of complexity around that. So I don't want to, sort of oversimplify what's going on in that dynamic, but I think there is a huge amount of urgency that merits jumping in. Heather, is it to you for next steps?
Yes, I'm just going to go over action 4 and action 5, which basically are the next steps. So action 4, anti-racist leadership professional development. We've already launched our administrator professional development with Yashika this year. We're so thankful to get to work with her again during the school year. That's actually one of the positives of the pandemic, because when we were not able to work with her from March on, it meant that then the ESD would extend her contract with us into this year. And so for that, we are really thankful. We've mapped out the rest of the trainings for our admin team for the remainder of the year with her as well. I think I mentioned to you in a Friday update a couple months ago that our book study this year for administrators is about race, and it's called Cast: The Origins of Our Discontent. And we have begun this study and are really diving into it as a study around anti-racism. And we have administrators stepping up each month to take turns leading that next portion of the study, which is a great way to share that responsibility. And as you likely remember, we've worked with various trainers and facilitators over the last 5 years, and it has just been how unfortunately it has gone. It hasn't been avoidable, but it's been less than desirable. And what we really hope is that with the exciting prospect of hiring an equity and inclusion coordinator, we will be able to just really provide some amazing consistency for our staff and our teams, right through to our students and our community, by getting this right hire in place. And so, as I mentioned earlier, that position is posted, and so stay tuned about how we'd like the board to be involved in that. Last but not least, Action 5, develop strategic equity initiative for Sherwood schools. So ultimately, what's learned throughout this process will inform the creation of what will be the initial phase of a strategic equity initiative that will be just a key part of our Sherwood School District's strategic plan. And just like how we've approached our strategic plan for the last many years, the equity portion also will be updated and modified all along the way. That equity visioning committee that you heard Gary talk about will be key in revisiting our work and then making adjustments in real time to that part of the strategic plan, as we just continue to strive to dismantle the systemic barriers that exist in our organization. So that's our plan. That's our body of work. Any other questions or comments, thoughts that we can address here before we move on in the agenda?
Looks like we're good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up is the superintendent's evaluation. And given that ordinarily we do a fairly detailed process and go through a lot of work, that in a year like this, the year of the asterisk, as I've come to think of it based on Jessica's comment last spring, I checked around with board members and we agreed generally that that didn't seem like a great use of anybody's time, given where we are and given all the factors that are going on. So what I've instead done in the packet, I think you've got, you've seen a letter that I've drafted. I'm gonna go ahead and read that letter into the record, make sure everyone is comfortable with that constituting our evaluation of Dr. Cordy. It says, Dear Dr. Cordy, the Board of Directors of the Sherwood School District has completed a superintendent performance review for the 2019-20 school year. For this evaluation cycle, the board chair discussed the superintendent's leadership and operational performance with board members and created this document, which was reviewed by the board. It should be noted that the 2019-20 school year was a highly atypical yet critical year for the Sherwood School District as a result of the coronavirus global pandemic and completion of projects funded by the passage of a $247.5 million bond. Dr. Cordy, you've led the district and our community through the demanding tasks of an early end to the school year, changing guidance regarding restarting school, and creation from scratch of a comprehensive distance learning model. This was all done while simultaneously bringing to conclusion construction of a new high school, major transformation projects at the new Sherwood Middle School, Hawksview Elementary, and Ridges Elementary, as well as various other projects, including creation of a new district office administrative center. These projects were all brought in on time and on budget. Finally, you've led efforts to transform educational experiences in the Sherwood School District following passage of the Student Success Act, including implementation of our first dual immersion language program. Dual language immersion program. I think I might have my words in the wrong order there. Anyway, Heather, this has been an incredible workload and an incredible set of accomplishments, all achieved under unimaginable circumstances. Truly well done. Based on direct observation, coaching, and conversation with board members, the board of directors considers your performance not just excellent, but truly above and beyond for the 2019-20 school year. I'd like to just check in with board members and make sure that that is reflective of our assessment of Dr. Cordy's performance. I got a thumbs up from Mike. I got thumbs ups all the way around. Then
I'd like to say that we started this year doing a boundary adjustment. And that, it turns out, was the easiest thing they had to do all year. So this is kind of, I didn't think that we would be saying that at the beginning of that year, but I think everything has truly been an incredible work. So thank you.
All right. That takes us to action items, beginning with appointments to the Budget Committee. Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Chair Allen, Superintendent Cordy, members of the board. This evening, you had the opportunity to interview 3 community members to be potentially part of our Budget Committee. As you know, positions 1 and 4 are open due to the end of those terms. And so I would ask that this group vote through the process that I identified, which is a Google form. And as soon as that's done, I can tally the votes and I can let you know who won.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to declare that I am recusing myself as I was not able to attend the interviews this evening.
Noted for the record.
Mr. Chair, I also missed the first interview, and I'd like to recuse myself because I was not able from all 3 candidates.
Also noted for the record, let the record show that there were 3 board members constituting a quorum who were able to participate in all of the interviews. Mr. Rose, does it look like the voting has completed?
Yes, it has.
And would you please report all the legal votes?
All the legal votes would indicate that Nicole Bertowski and Ryan Dunlap are elected to our Budget Committee, positions 1 and 4.
Great, thank you, and congratulations to each of them. Next up, second read of the All Students Belong policy. Ms. Andrade.
Thank you, Chair Allen, Dr. Cordy, and Board of Directors. As you know, last month we brought you model policy language from OSBA for 2 elements that would bring us into compliance with the All Students Belong rule passed by the State Board of Education. These elements include language banning symbols, as well as the the bias process, bias complaint process that we would follow to address any complaints brought to our district. Tonight, I am bringing that back to you for a second read and possible adoption.
Any questions for Ms. Andrade? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt policy ACB and policy ACB-AR.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, Eric got his eye in. Motion carries.
Great, thank you so much.
Let's go ahead and move on to the always exciting OSBA policy updates. Mr. Everett.
And last but not least, thank you, Chair Allen, and good evening, everyone. In November, we brought updates to board policies in sections G personnel and J students for first read. And tonight we bring those policy updates back to you for second read and hopeful adoption. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Emmert? Is there a motion?
Chair, I move that we adopt the policy adjustments as presented.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Any other items that need to come before the board tonight?
Just one.
Two.
I've been I can't believe I'm already losing it, but I've been looking forward to this moment and dreading it all in the same time. But it's my intention to announce I'm going to be stepping down from the board after 13 and a half years. It's time, and I'm really excited that with the Bond Oversight Committee and the bond campaign and so many other groups that have been engaged in the last 2 years, that I know we're going to find someone that's absolutely wonderful to fill this spot and join the board. So we're not completely sure of the timing, but we're going to come up with a process and reach out to the community and move forward soon. So appreciate it. It's amazing, and I'll be here in January, but anyway, just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. Well, thanking you for that announcement seems a little weird, Sue, but thank you for your absolutely incredible service to the school district, to the board, to the kids and families of Sherwood, to this whole community. I think about the buildings that have been built on your watch and the programs that have been launched and the investments that have been made, and the progress and changes, the good changes that we've made as a district. It's a real testament to public service in general and to yours particularly. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would just like to add, I once told your husband that they should build a statue to you in this community for all that you've done. There's 3 school buildings standing because of the work that you did. I mean, so many others worked at it too, but no one worked harder and longer.
So Sue, even though I knew this was happening tonight, it still catches me in a way that I'm just gonna hold my thoughts for next month when I have a chance to compose myself a little bit more, because the bottom line is it was about 10 and a half years ago exactly that you and Connie Hansen drove over to Redmond and conducted a site visit. And it was, it's just been an amazing relationship ever since then. But thankfully, I don't need to talk about that right now, and I'll save it for later.
Sounds good. Let's not. I thought it'd be a lot easier not being with everybody. It doesn't really help. So anyway, I look forward to January, and like I said, I know it's going to be a great transition. So thank you.
All right, if there is nothing further, our next meeting is January 13th, 2021, and we'll keep you posted on the nature and format of that meeting.